I had the absolute pleasure of chatting with actor, writer, and filmmaker Kenneth Beckford, who directed the film Long Dance. The film was selected by the Black Alphabet Film Festival, which takes place in Chicago, October 11th through the 13th. Please visit the website blackalphabet.org to secure your tickets. Now stay tuned for the interview.
Before we discuss your film Long Dance, I would love to learn how you discovered your passion for film.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I definitely, like always, grew up in artistic settings. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and that was a formative time. I started out in acting. My parents kind of threw me into it because I was a very shy kid, and they thought that would be a good way to get me out of my shell. But I always love watching movies. I love watching TV. So they were like, let's just put you in something. See, maybe you'll do it. Um, and I think as a shy kid, I really fell in love with the idea of being able to kind of transform into other characters. I definitely was very insecure as a kid and felt that acting was able to learning the techniques really helped me discover a lot of my own insecurities and being able to embody strong characters. That was just an escape for me as a very shy kid. And then growing up, so I was acting a lot. My parents could see that I was taking it very seriously. And growing up in Cleveland, there's just like not as much opportunity. So they were like, let's try to move to a bigger market as well as like be around diverse people. So for high school, I moved to Atlanta and attended a performing arts high school.
Okay.
Um, Called DeKalb School of the Arts. And then that also introduced me because I was a drama major. That was the first time that I was surrounded by Black kids who were also not only doing acting, but were behind the camera and also writing the scripts that we were able to act in. And it was the first time that I was acting, but was actually playing roles that weren't like when I was auditioning, I did a lot of the like commercials for like, Black family or like being the nerdy best friend, but I felt like the roles at school that I was able to play were very versatile and very dynamic. And I realized through also taking film classes that was allowed it through high school, I really found the power in being able to create my own characters as well and kind of being able to tell my own stories. So I think going to that high school was very transformative for me. And then I also through high school really got into filmmaking as well and really wanted to like learn how to write and create so that I could also control like the stories that I want to tell being more diverse. And then that ultimately led me to UCLA where I got my degree in film and then created the film Long Dance, which was kind of like a culmination of my like high school LA experience.
Okay. I actually didn't know that you were an actor. So you wrote and directed Long Dance.
Yes.
Do you see yourself more as an actor, writer, or director?
Yo, that's a great question. And I feel like because I went to UCLA specifically for film, I grew up and like really always considered myself as an actor. Like that's really how I started. Um, and then I think going to UCLA and like the label of being like a film major and just like I felt like because I had acted so much as a kid that I didn't really like the camera stuff, like all that stuff. I was like, I don't know, like how to do the cinematography. That was a lot of stuff that I learned in college. So I really was trying to focus on like honing in my filmmaking skills, especially like with the film, like Long Dance was a year-long process. And this was really my first film I had ever made too. So I wanted to really like I had done like little projects and stuff in school, but like first full length, like with the Ari Alexa, getting the equipment, learning permits, learning like the shot list, casting, all those different things. I was like, this was really my first time. So I really was trying to like hone in on that and really be like, I took a break from acting in a sense, really in college to really like hone in on those skills. Um, but I would say now after college and being able to put this film out and being very proud of it, I think now moving back to Atlanta, that it is something that's on my mind and being like with my next project, now that I have the skills that I learned from long dance, I definitely want to get back into acting, get in front of the camera and kind of like be a multi-hyphenate and kind of create films that I could also be a part of and like use my own experiences. But like work on getting in front of the camera. So I would say now I'm like in the process of transitioning back to actor, writer, director, and treating it equally. But I would say at the moment, like with long dance, I was really like being like, I'm a filmmaker right now. Like, I'll get back into later, but let me like, you know, focus and get this film done.
Okay. So going back to acting, did you ever have a role where you first saw yourself in the character?
Well, you know, that's an interesting question too, because I definitely felt like when I was growing up that my parents like made sure that we watched a lot of like 90s television. So like the Fresh Prince. I also grew up on like Everybody Hates Chris, Blackish. And I felt like I always identified with the like more like nerdy, funny coming of age character. I never felt like specifically as a kid, like I fit into like the very like athletic, masculine aspect of that. So I felt like I identified with that part of those characters, like more the like funny, kind of awkward. I was awkward too. And I was like, oh, I see a lane for that, I feel like. And growing up in Cleveland, before I moved to Atlanta, I was like in predominantly white schools. And like my family, I still had like my cousins, but I was in very white areas specifically through childhood. Yeah. So I felt like film was the place where I was able to see like my only forms of representation and feel kind of seen. Okay. But I do feel like, and this is kind of like a segue into long dance specifically. And this is kind of like information that I kind of put, but it's very new too. But I actually didn't come out until the end of the process of making long dance 2. And I always knew I was queer too, but I never felt that like I saw queer Black characters that represented myself. And then obviously just kind of like with the struggles of also like being closeted as well, that I kind of just like, you know, felt very isolated in that manner. And I feel like in terms of like a queer Black character that I really felt identified with, I didn't really feel that. And I think that partly through long dance, I definitely wanted to, and I think not just with queer characters, but with Black characters in general, I always was keen on like, I felt like the generation from the 90s to like the 2000s, there was not like a lot of young Black characters on screen that even just like for straight Black men or for like kids that they could really see like the humanity and like comedy, coming of age, like just happy go lucky things where that's kind of like always been my thing. So I feel like long dance was definitely created off of like, I definitely wanted to, I think growing up, once it got into like the 2010s, 2020s, to see like better representation of like younger Black characters, specifically Black males as a whole, in like very dynamic spaces.
Okay. For anyone that hasn't watched Long Dance, how would you describe it to them?
I would say it follows Wayne Brown. He is a very awkward but very charismatic in a way too, high schooler who's attempting to lose his virginity on the night of his school dance and tries to kind of handle the pressure through his friends, through the girl he's talking to. I would say it's kind of like the coming of age comedies of the 90s that our generation didn't really get a chance to see. I think I've always felt like throughout like high school and college, I always miss just kind of like being able, kind of like with Insecure, shows like Atlanta, where the characters aren't subjected to their trauma and they're kind of just able to go through the same experiences as everyone else. And I think it's a very universal story of the guy trying to like get the confidence and like the girl. And I think there's a lot of funny moments that the audience is going to feel regardless of your race, sexual orientation. And that is kind of just like a good, lucky, happy film that will remind you of your childhood and adolescence days of going to prom.
Okay. Before completing Long Dance, you were a PA on 2 films. How did those experiences help you to create your film?
Yeah, I would say, given that I was coming into UCLA with a lot of like acting experience, but I wouldn't say that I had a lot of like behind the camera experience. I did a lot of writing classes in high school, but being a director and understanding like the on-set terms and things, I was very like intimidated by. And I knew that I was going to a school that like eventually I was going to learn these things. But I definitely, when I first came in, felt very insecure about like being like, oh, should I know all this stuff? Like who has experience, who doesn't? So I feel like being a PA really allowed me to not have the pressure of like understanding all these terms, but being able to just watch at all of the different roles and kind of just like being honest and being like, oh, I'm here to, you know, learn these different terms, learn how to navigate a film set. I think it definitely helped me get more comfortable and kind of like see things that work and also see things that didn't work in directing as well. And I kind of took that when I was going in to make Long Dance and being like, oh, I remember this director and she made an effort to like make sure to talk to all the crew members. And then I've also seen directors in school and through PAing that like, you know, were very like fast paced, but didn't really get a chance to communicate well. And I think really like being a PA helped me absorb a lot of the things that I wanted to take as myself, like growing into a professional world. And I was able to take those and be like, okay, so when I get to the spot where I'm able to be in charge, I know how I want to handle it. So I feel like it's a great place to be when you're really just wanting to like absorb knowledge and not have the pressure of like, I'm in a certain role and I need to deliver. You could kind of like help out there and there, but be like, I'm here to watch.
So I love that you were able to take in information that you received from set and then apply it to the sets where you were the director. So I really love that.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's important too, because even now, like I'm working on a show, BMF, and it's my first time like working on a really professional like show that people know it's on TV versus like student films and stuff. But I was even aware, like, and people were like, oh, how do you feel about PAing? And I was like, I've never been on a TV show of this caliber with Black talent. And I think being able to see, like, I ultimately do want to be like in film and television, like having my own show, having my own movies. And like, I think being able to watch and absorb first and see, like, there have been moments and where directors have come in and have been like very communicative, and then being a PA and seeing that people on production have also been like, oh, it would have been nice if this director kind of like, you know, spent more time with this, and seeing that like, you know, every process is different, but it's, I think it's a great place. And I think there's no shame in like being able to like learn and just be like, you know, I'm want to be on this level. So being able to start at the bottom can help you when you get to the top to know what you like and what you don't like.
I'm not an actor. My best friend went to UCLA in the theater program. I didn't realize that the theater program is with the film program. Like, it's the same department. I had no clue. It's beautiful because I feel like as a theater student, you can take film classes. And I would visit him, and he would pick me up at the airport, and we would immediately go to like 3 auditions all over the city. And so after moving here, I was like, oh, I would, you know, after a while, after living here, I was like, oh, it would be cool to be a background actor. As a background actor, I did not know film speak or like set speak, where people would say pantomime. I'm like, what is that?
Right.
And they would give like specific words like first team, second team. I'm like, what is that? And so like no one teaches you those things. And so you were in a great position because being a PA, you're learning language. And if you don't know something, you can ask someone, you know, kind of like in a corner, like, what does that mean?
Right. Yeah.
So you have on the job training, which is crucial to kind of like moving forward in the entertainment industry, because like not knowing something can get you in trouble on set. Right. I've noticed more directors are writing films. What are the advantages of writing and directing a film?
Wow. Yeah. I feel like for me, I always enjoyed the writing process. Like I never really, I've done some directing, like music videos at school or like projects through UCLA where like we had to work with a script that wasn't ours and direct. But I always desired to write and direct. Like I've always thought it worked hand in hand. I feel like for me, one of the advantages is that you don't necessarily have to deal with any miscommunication with intention or vision. I think that even like for Long Dance, I would say too, to add on to like not just writing and directing, but also like being kind of a producer in a way as an indie filmmaker too, and like having a hand in like where you're shooting and the actors you're casting. I think that for me, writing Long Dance, I had a very clear vision of how I wanted it to go. And I don't think that I could, you know, obviously someone could have taken it and I could have communicated that with the director and still had a great process and had new ideas that I may not have thought of.
Okay.
But I think for people with a clear vision, it's great to kind of, you know, be able to, there's like one person who's able to communicate their clear vision with everyone, and sometimes it doesn't get lost in translation. As well as I do think too, just like logistically, if there are changes that need to be made, you as the sole person who created it and like being able to, like with Long Dance, there were location changes just because of like logistical issues or casting changes where like maybe the writing had to be tweaked. I trusted myself to know that I like could adjust to locations and stuff as the director and still have the heart and the knowing exactly what I was trying to get out of the film because like I wrote it. So I feel like there's just a level of artistic freedom as a writer that I felt like I get as a director as well. And I think as a director too, if you do write your own project, that there's things like intentionality. I think the two art forms go so hand in hand that when you do get a chance to do both at the same time, it only strengthens your like powers as a writer and as a director individually too.
Okay. What has been the best advice that you've received as a writer?
I would say the best advice has been write what you know. And I feel like too in film school, I think I had a professor who was like, if you're afraid of going deep and sharing yourself, that's the things that you want to write about, because the things that you can be scared of are the things that actually hold a lot of power. And that's the things that people can resonate with. I think before Long Dance, a lot of my writing was very like, and I think I recognize like I'm 23. I was young at 18. I definitely like was changing, but I definitely was going into college being very aware of like, oh, I hope like being very aware of like, oh, Moonlight trends, things that I thought that like the stylistics of like what was trending at the time or what shows were popular and being like, oh, okay, this is what I should try to create characters from to, you know, this is what audiences are liking. Like, that's how I should write. But being like, there's something special about like, oh, maybe you've always felt isolated and you've never seen this story before. And that people may not always like present, you know, young Black characters or present characters in certain lights. But when you do that and you take the risk and do it for the first time, that's when people start to actually resonate and be like, this really meant something to me because no one is taking the chance on it. And I think it taught me too to like not lean into the fear of things that I may still be dealing with, because those things ultimately can help me heal and also the audience as well. Even like Long Dance, I literally didn't come out until the film was like test screened and stuff. And I knew that was a process I was still working on. But I see that being able to like put my full self into it and being able to like not be afraid, definitely I could see how meaningful it was in the art. And I would definitely say like I'm working and always going to try to continue to like lean into what I'm scared of, because I know that that can be impactful.
Okay. What has been the best advice that you've received as a director?
I would say the best advice is to know that you don't know everything, and that's okay. And that film is a collaborative effort. And the reason why people are all here is because everybody has a certain role. And it's okay to not, you know, be the biggest expert in areas and to lean on others for help. And I think that I definitely took that in and was always just like, and I think as a person, like I always am the type to be like, I don't know everything. Like even my relationship with my cinematographer and being like, you know, this is a collaborative effort, but I'm definitely open to ideas. Like I don't want to be so like keen into a vision that like I'm shutting anything down, always open to listening to ideas. When sharing like ideas on shots or things, and maybe the cinematographer has a different idea, like she's the cinematographer, he's the cinematographer, those are the people that, you know, are also, we're all trying to help execute this vision. So there, I have been on sets where people have complained that the director is so like, which I understand, but can be so like fixated on a specific shot or a specific vision. And they feel that there's a certain power of being a director and being like, you know, I'm the head, so I should be the person that people come to when they have a question. And I definitely feel that way. But I think there is a level of humility that people can really appreciate, especially department heads, when you let them know that you're hiring them or you're working with them because you trust them and you want their input, and not being afraid to ask for it. Like even just being like, I'm not sure what would look good. Like, can you help me? Not coming and being like, oh, I'm having a meeting, so I need to know exactly where this is supposed to be set. I need to know like what, it's okay. It's okay if you don't know. But, you know, still having your thoughts as a visionary, but don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, but it was just like interesting hearing your thoughts about a director and them wanting to be the only person who has input in a particular shot, because I've seen it from the productions that I've done. It's a collaborative effort. Like there are times where they think they have a shot on set, but then someone will say, I think we should do it this way. And sometimes it's not the director, it's like, you know, it's someone else. And they're like, I love what you see. Let's try this and see what happens. So yeah, it should be more of a collaborative effort. Definitely.
Yeah. There were so many times on set too that like that shot list, like a lot of the close-ups, a lot of the things, like even in the moment. And that was something too, I think another good advice from my professor before, because we had an advisor who helped us out with our films like before we started production too. So he would give us notes and advice. Mark Rosman, he said too, to like, don't be tied to your shot list, because it's gonna change. Like it's inevitable. You shouldn't be in the moment feeling things. If your cinematographer is like, this is actually such a beautiful setup right here, like let's go here. be open to change because it's inevitable. And I think that really helped me too. Like we were on set, the prom scene, obviously there were so many like places and angles to get. And in the moment, there were just so many like, oh, we should get a close up of his eyes because of this lighting right here. It's so beautiful. Like, and I was like, yeah, let's go. Like, let's get it. Like, I definitely agree too. Like, it's a collaborative effort and it's important to be open because like that's where the magic happens.
Okay. So you said shot list. So I have a question for you.
Yes.
When you were writing Long Dance, the script, were you creating the shot list at the same time or that just came after?
That came completely after. And that was something I was nervous about too, because I trusted my abilities as a writer very well. I think that because specifically too with the prom scene, that was the one scene that I was like very, very ambitious about. And even my professors reading the scripts had even told me, and they were like, like everything else, this could work, but just know, like, where are you gonna shoot this? Like, you're talking about I think the big scene where like they're coming down in the entrance, and the people are dancing, they were like, how are you gonna do that? Like, you don't have no money, you don't have the equipment, like real stuff, because it is something that like, you have to find the equipment, you have to find the location, you have to get the extras, you have to create the production design. And UCLA, we only had 4 days to shoot. So like for this film specifically, I didn't have the luxury of like being able to procrastinate and being like, oh, okay, I can figure it out. It was like, you got 2 months, you got to figure it out. Like, these are the days you have to shoot. So I wrote the script, and then after that, luckily through UCLA too, we did have classes that coincided before filming. So they did read through the scripts, and like our professor would give us ideas about like how to shot list stuff. But we definitely prioritized like making sure the script was done and that the story tracks, like everything was out on the page, because like if it's not there, or like if people read the script after and you made the shot list, but people are like, oh, I don't like resonate with the characters, or oh, I don't understand the ending, that changes the whole, like, what's the point of like, now I'm gonna go back and do it again. So we prioritize finishing, making sure that we felt the script was strong. And then after that, it was like shot list, like figuring out locations and everything.
Okay. So for any writer that's watching this that wants to direct their first film, I have a technical question. How do you translate like an individual scene into a different shots? Like how do you do that? How do you figure out the shot from like dialogue?
Well, I would say definitely, I think going to film school, it always taught me like when you are writing, especially like if you're writing and you're the person who's planning to be the director and shooting it, that ultimately, like we always learn this, there's like 3 stages of the film. It's like the script, production, and editing it. And at all stages, like it is not going to be what you think. Like even once you shoot it and you get into the editing bay, or who's ever editing it, and you look at the footage, it's just going to be different than what you envision at the moment. So I would say that like my advice first too would be not to be super like, don't be super afraid of having a like very specific shot list off the bat. I think especially when you're writing it, you can visualize it. I think like keening in on the moments that are important. Like I knew for the living room scene, writing with Wayne and the boys, that like Wayne is a very awkward character. And I knew that like through the shots that I wanted to showcase his distance from the guys. So I knew that I never wanted to have the boys or Wayne in the same shot unless it was like a very important moment, like when he smokes weed for the first time and now he's like giggling. So that kind of determined for me. I was like, okay, I always want to like have Wayne in a single shot and the guys can be in a 2-shot and have their individual coverage. But that also like creatively allowed me to think about my shot list, being like, what do I want to get out of this and how can the shot help? Because ultimately, like, you know, there are rules like that we learned in film school, like, you know, you want to make sure you get coverage on everybody, like get your master. But ultimately, like, there still is a lot of creative decisions that come into when you're on set, like how close you're shooting versus how far back can indicate so many things visually too, that you do have leeway as a director to decide. Like, you don't have, it's not like shooting it right here is the right answer versus shooting it back here. So I think also being able to trust yourself and being like, you can, like, there's a creative process of like, I know what I want to get out visually. And then part of that too is like, I would also say too, if you're really directing a film that you're planning on shooting, like, I would also say like, have a relationship with your cinematographer. And like, I do think that they, as the visual kind of like department head, can also like bounce off ideas too. But I was very keen on like, this is what I want to. And then my DP Ingrid was super helpful with being like, okay, well then maybe if we shoot it from this angle, or you should get like a close up of his legs, because then that could, you know, we could use that in the editing bay. So I think too, when it comes to the shot list too, it is a collaborative effort as well. Yeah. But my biggest advice would be like, it's not like a, this is what's right and this is what's wrong. It's ultimately like a creative field. So you have creative decisions when it comes to your shot list as well.
Of the two roles, so being a writer and a director, which one do you think is more difficult?
Ooh. To me, I would say I think a director is more difficult, because I do think that there is just so much communication, and ultimately I think that it's a lot harder to find, I think it's harder to gel and find every single person and place, location, and have just like so many people there for like, at the end of the day, the director's vision, and just being able to manage all of that versus, I think writers, you know, there's obviously writing a script is hard, finding the like moments, finding the time in life to write is hard. So I definitely think like writing isn't easy, but I do think there's a level of collaboration that as a director, you just like have to be able to manage all different types of people, handle all different types of problems, all the logistical situations that could happen on the day. People kind of look to you to be the answer. And I think that that just comes with a lot of responsibility as well as a lot of like focus. And I do think that that could be very challenging sometimes.
Awesome. Thank you so much for chatting with me. It has been an absolute pleasure. And I hope that the world falls in love with Long Dance.